Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriditam Kalmashapaham Shravana Mangalam Srimadaadatam Bhuvigrinanti ye Bhurida Janaha. Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, as recorded by M. Mahendranath Gupta, a disciple and apostle of the Master. Sri Ramakrishna Bhakta Sange, Kamala Kutire Sri Ramakrishna of Sri Yukta Keshav Chandra Sen. Sri Ramakrishna in the company of devotees, and he is in Kamala Kutir, the house of Keshav Chandra Sen. Tritiya Pariched. Sri Ramakrishna Kaptaner Badi Huiya, Sri Yukta Keshav Soner Kamala Kutir Namak Batite Ashiya Chen. Sange Ram, Manomohan, Surendra, Master Prabhuti Aniguli Bhakto. Shokale, Dvital Hal Ghare Upaveshan Koriyachen, Sri Yukta Pratap Majumdar, Sri Yukta Trailokya Prabhuti Brahma Bhaktagano Upastita Chen. So after visiting Kaptan Upadhyay's place, Sri Ramakrishna is visiting the Kamala Kutir, which is the name of Keshav Chandra Sen's house. Along with Sri Ramakrishna are Ramchandra Datta, Manamohan, Surendra, was Suresh Swamiji, or Sri Ramakrishna used to also call him as Suresh. Suren Mitra. Master, that means Master Mahasaya, Mahendranath Gupta. Since he was a school teacher, he was called Master Mahasaya. It's very common in Bengal. Anybody who is a teacher is called a master, and Mahasaya is a special title of honor, a respected person, Master Mahasaya. Prabhuti Aniguli Bhakto. Several devotees, some names have been mentioned, and all of them are sitting in Dvitala, in the first floor, in the hall. There are two ways of designating the floors. If you start with ground floor, as the British do, then a ground floor, 0, then first floor, 1, second floor is 2, third floor is 3, and so on. Or if you follow the American system, they call the ground floor as 1, and respectively 2, 3, 4, etc. In Bengali, ground floor following American system is called Ektola. Ektola means the first floor, which is ground floor. And Dutala is second floor, which according to the British system will be first floor. So you should be careful in understanding this. So Dvitala Hall Ghare Upaveshan Koriyachen, that means they are sitting in Dutala. Dutala means first floor. Sri Yukta Pratap Majumdar, Trailokya Prabhuti Brahmagana Bhakto Achen. Some Brahma Bhaktas like Pratap Majumdar and Trailokya Nath Sannal, they are also present. Trailokya Nath Sannal has wrote so many songs, wonderful songs. Some of them Ramakrishna liked so much. There's one famous song, Amaye de ma pagol kore Brahma moyi de ma pagol kore Brahma moyi de ma pagol kore Ar kaj nai ma gyan bichare de ma pagol kore. Mother, make me mad with thy divine love. What is the use of reason and logic? Sri Ramakrishna said, this song fully reflects my bhava, my attitude. Trailokya Sanyal. Then Pratap Majumdar is a person who was very much attracted to Sri Ramakrishna as a Brahmo devotee. He went to the Chicago Parliament of Religions to represent the Brahmo Dharma. He is a very wonderful speaker, prolific writer, and a very powerful person, had huge contacts in America at that time. And he was senior to Narendra, of course. And when he saw Narendra representing Hinduism, he was so intensely happy, delighted. He said, "Oh, Naren, you have come. I'm meeting after a long time." I was so happy. But the moment Swami Vivekananda became famous, on that historic occasion of the 11th September 1893, of the short speech, became extremely popular, he became a celebrity, then Pratap Majumdar's attitude completely changed. Swamiji himself writes very sadly, Pratap is mad with jealousy, and he wanted to spoil Swamiji's chances, even trying to go so far as to assassinate his character, and telling everybody, Pratap Majumdar, that Swami Vivekananda is a name which he has assumed. He is not a real sannyasi. According to the Hindu lore, he is a kayastha, not a Brahmin. And he called him Shudra. He has no right for sannyas, and he cannot represent Hinduism. And people believed him because they didn't know. So much so, some of them, the authorities in the parliament, told Swami Vivekananda, you go and get a testimony from India that one, you are a genuine, real sannyasi, two, that you are authorized to represent Hinduism. Think of that. He who was called Jagadguru later was chastised and sacked from Vidyasagar school because Narayan Master was incompetent to teach. That is the allegation. Vidyasagar's son-in-law brought this allegation against him. These are strange things happening. He who was a Jagadguru, Yugacharya, was said to be incompetent to teach school children in Calcutta in those days. How much jealousy can go, you can't imagine. Jealousy is a terrible demon. See, other things like hatred, etc., you may perhaps see some logic. But jealousy has no logic. That person of whom I am jealous is not doing anything to me. He is going on his own way. But just because he is thriving, he is becoming a celebrity, he is being accepted and worshipped, I become jealous. What is the logic? The ego gets terribly threatened when you see somebody else thriving before you. Rather than becoming happy, delighted, rejoicing in one of your brothers coming up, Hindu brothers. Some kind of subtle rivalry always went on between the Brahmos and the Hindus. Sri Ramakrishna came and bridged it. The Samanvaya Acharya, the prophet of harmony that he was always careful to bridge the gap between these apparently rival sections of Hinduism. Brahma Samaj has offshoot from Hinduism, just like the Buddhism did. The rebel child of Hinduism, as Swamiji mentioned about Buddhism. So that's another story. So Pratap Majumdar is very much attracted to Sri Ramakrishna's personality. He has a wonderful article which he wrote in English. And the language and the way he has described Sri Ramakrishna's samadhi and his ecstasy, the way he admires him, and the expression which he has used towards him is remarkable. Those of you who are interested can please read this article by Pratap Chandra Majumdar on Sri Ramakrishna. ঠাকুর শ্রীযুক্ত কেশবকে বড় ভালোবাসেন। যখন বেলঘরের বাগানে সশিষ্য তিনি সাধন ভজন করিতেছিলেন, অর্থাৎ 1875 খ্রিস্টাব্দে মাঘোৎসবের পর কিছু দিনের মধ্যে ঠাকুর একদিন বাগানে গিয়া তাহার সহিত দেখা করিয়াছিলেন। Sri Ramakrishna is very fond of Keshav Chandra Sen. When Keshav Chandra Sen was engaged in sadhana, in spiritual practices, in a garden house in Belgharia. That is in 1875. Sri Ramakrishna went and met him in the garden house and had a conversation with Keshav Chandra Sen. Remember, Keshav Chandra Sen was a extraordinarily powerful figure in those days. In fact, he met Queen Victoria in those days and shook hands with him. And was such a popular speaker. At the same time, he was a great devotee of God. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, when he used to talk about God, tears of joy used to flow down from his cheeks. And he was almost an icon of the young Bengal, the youth of Bengal in those days, including Narendra. His power and greatness can easily be gauged from the fact that he could impress and mesmerize people like Narendra. Naren, Rakhal, Shashi, Sharat, many of these monastic sannyas and disciples of Sri Ramakrishna came from the Brahma Samaj. And Sri Ramakrishna has so much of affection for Keshav Chandra Sen. He guided him, chided him, corrected him when necessary, but out of tremendous affection for Keshav. In fact, Keshav became very ill. Sri Ramakrishna says, I used to suddenly get up in the night, started shedding tears. And I told Mother, make Keshav well. Otherwise, to whom shall I talk? With whom shall I converse when I go to Calcutta? Then he said, I have vowed to the mother that I will offer her tender coconut with sugar if Keshav gets well. So much of affection he had for Keshav Chandra Sen. Because he contributed the chunk of Sri Ramakrishna's band of disciples. Shonge Bhagne Hridayaram. Hridayaram is a Bhagna, that means sister's son. A very interesting character, Hridayaram Mukhopadhyay. He served Sri Ramakrishna so much. Sri Ramakrishna says he was serving him like a shadow. When Sri Ramakrishna was going through his ecstatic movements, his sadhana, he did not have any consciousness of his body or the senses. He didn't know when he will eat, when he will sleep, when he will bathe. Nothing was known to him. Hridayaram ate with him, slept with him, bathed him, and like a shadow, constantly he was with him to serve him. But later on, he also changed much. There's a different story. Sri Ramakrishna said, nobody has served him with such devotion and intensity as Hridaya, and nobody tormented me like Hridaya. These are all strange leelas. And Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Jatila Kutila Nahole Leela Pushtaina. Unless there are people like Jatila and Kutila, that means crooked people, wicked people, funny people. Unless these people are there in a big drama, and the drama becomes tasteless. The villain, people may find fault with the villain in a cinema, but he keeps the cinema going. He shows the glory of the hero. So in life also we find so many Jatilas and Kutilas disturbing us. Remember what Sri Ramakrishna said, Jatila Kutila Nahole Lila Pushtayana. The Leela which is played before us, God's Leela, in which we are also participants, will not become full and funny and packed with delight, joy, unless there are Jatilas and Kutilas. Like a buffoon in a circus, the villain in a cinema or a drama, these people are part of the Leela. Sri Ramakrishna had great liking for Hridaya and bore with him. So Hriday Ram is with Ramakrishna. বেলঘরের এই বাগানে তাকে বলিয়াছিলেন, তোমারই লাজ খসেছে, অর্থাৎ তুমি সব ত্যাগ করে সংসারের বাহিরেও থাকতে পারো, আবার সংসারেও থাকতে পারো। যেমন ব্যাঙাচির লাজ খসলে জলেও থাকতে পারে, আবার ডাঙাতেও থাকতে পারে। When Ramakrishna met him in that garden house in Belgharia, he told him, among all these people, you alone have lost your tail. Everybody was confused about what kind of statement is this, what does he mean. Then he explained, a tadpole, before it becomes a full-fledged fish, a full-fledged frog, has a tail, and that tail makes him live either on land or in water, not both. Usually it is in water only. After some time in the evolution and growth, its tail drops off, and he can now jump to the land and live in the land, and also live in the water. So this example Ramakrishna gives and tells Keshab, only Keshab amongst all these people can live in the samsara also, and also he can remain absorbed in God. And he used to say, like Janaka Raja, who was administering a kingdom and there was a monarch there, at the same time, Janaka Raja also discussed Brahman, was a jnani. Ramakrishna used to say, he used to hold two swords, one of jnana, other of karma, in his both the hands, and happily play the game of jnana karma, like Janaka. And he says, very often, like Janaka, it is possible to remain in the world also if necessary, and also be absorbed in Brahman. Then he used to sing a song, Janaka Raja Mahateja, Kisher Tulo Tar Truti, Edik Oidik Duidik Rekhe, Khe Chilo Duder Bati. Janaka Raja was such a powerful man, powerful king. What did he lack in life? He kept both the worlds, this world and the next world, the samsara as well as God, absorption and thought of Brahman, as well as the kingdom which he was administering, and Khechilo Duderebati. That means he was rejoicing, delighting. পরে দক্ষিণেশ্বরে কমলকুটিরে ব্রাহ্ম সমাজ ইত্যাদি স্থানে অনেকবার ঠাকুর কথাচ্ছলে তাহাকে উপদেশ দিয়াছিলেন। Later on in Dakshineshwar, when Keshav Chandra Sen used to come, in Kamalakutir, which is Keshav Chandra Sen's own residence and house, and the Brahma Samaj, which is Upasana Sthan, where he used to go for doing the rituals in the Upasana, in all these various places, অনেক বার, many times, ঠাকুর কথাচ্ছলে Sri Ramakrishna used to instruct him in the course of conversation, Upadesh diyashilen, instructions he gave. An example of this Upadesh, of this instruction, is quoting here, Nana poth diya, Nana dhormer bhitor diya, Ishwar labh hote pare. God realization can happen through various paths and following so many religions. মাঝে মাঝে নির্জনে সাধন ভজন করে ভক্তি লাভ করে সংসারে থাকা যায়। মাঝে মাঝে Nirjane sadhan bhajan kore. Now and then go into solitude and get absorbed in sadhana. Ramakrishna often used to tell the householders this. You are constantly busy in worldly affairs. Now and then get lost in sadhana, go to a solitary place and perform intense sadhana, crying for God. acquire bhakti, and then you can continue in the world. Janakadi Brahmagyan labh kore সংসারে ছিলেন. People like Janaka, after having had a realization of Brahman, they continued to be in the world. ব্যাকুল হয়ে তাকে ডাকতে হয়, তবে দেখা দেন. Once again the same burden of Ramakrishna's song, Vyakulata. With intense longing, yearn for him, call him with intense devotion, and be restless to get him. Vyakulata is one yoga which directly leads you to God. It's called Vyakulata Yoga. Rajagopalacharya, who wrote the famous book Ramakrishna Upanishad, calls it Vyakulata Yoga. Which is that yoga? Intense longing for God. Just like you can't live without oxygen, a breath of air, if you come to a position that you can't live without God, then God is near at hand. He says Vyakulata is Arunodaya. That means the crimson red which you see in the sky before the sun rises. Then rising of the sun, which is the jnana, knowledge of God, is not far away, is not long away. It is just immanent. Vyakulata is one thing which Ramakrishna constantly emphasized. Pandit Shashadhar Tarkachodamani, one of the very famous scholars of Sri Ramakrishna's times, he came to Sri Ramakrishna and asked him, what kind of Vyakulata, you always talk about Vyakulata, what kind of longing is required to see God, to realize God? Sri Ramakrishna, the master of stories, he immediately said, Etta Golpashono, listen to a story. A guru, along with his disciples, went for a bath in the river. So the disciples were also taking bath, the guru is also taking bath. And one of the disciples who had been asking the guru the same question, this disciple was taking bath by plunging into the river, and his head was just below water. The guru immediately caught hold of his head and would not allow him to come up. And the disciple was struggling to release himself. Oh Gurudev, what are you doing to me? Oh Master, oh please release me, I can't breathe. The Guru will not leave him even then. After several attempts and cries and weepings, finally let him go. Then he came out of water panting for breath and said, ah. Then the Guru asked him, how did you feel underwater, my child? The disciple said, what? How do I feel? I was just dying for a breath of air. Then the Guru said, if you have this kind of Vyakulata for God, then God realization is just near at hand. Shashadhar immediately said, yes, I now understand. He was a great, elevated soul. Immediately catch the spirit of what Ramakrishna said. If you can have that kind of Vyakulata, just like you can't live without pranavayu or oxygen, you pant for a breath of air, your whole life becomes completely meaningless without God, then you can come to God. Two remarkable verses in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sikshashtakam, 6 verses of instruction. Nayanam galadashrudharaya vadanam gadgadaruddhaya gira pulakair nichitam vabukkada tava nama grahane bhavishyati. O Lord, when will that blessed day dawn, when tears will constantly be flowing down my cheeks, when I take your name, God's name, and my speech will become choked in the throat? Nayanam galarashrutharaya vadanam gadgada ruddhaya gira pulakair nichitam vapukkada. The entire body will be full of horripilation. Hairs will stand on end. When will that day come when such a situation, such transformation will come to me? Then he says, Yugayatam nimeshena chakshusha pravrishayatam shunyayatam jagat sarvam govinda virahena me. Yugayatam nimeshena. Just a minute appears to be several ages, aeons. Chakshusha pravrishayatam. Continuously streams of tears are flowing down my cheek and I lose consciousness. Shunyayatam jagat sarvam. The entire world becomes a shunya, void, because I can't see you, because my viraha, because my separation from you, O Govinda. This is the state of Vyakulata. Sri Ramakrishna had this in intensest measure. Radhika is supposed to have gone through this. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, Mirabai, so many examples of devotees who just couldn't live without God. For us, God is one of the many things that we seek. In fact, Swami Vivekananda funnily says, we keep so many things in our shelf as a display. Rich people have beautiful things arranged in their rooms, in their showcases. In a corner, there is a picture of God and a picture of the various devatas, and sometimes they show, they put flowers and then show incense sticks. So it is one of the many things which they possess. It is not the only thing which they want. So the Vyakulata is you want nothing else but God. Vyakul hoye take dakta hoy tobe dekha den. If you can intensely long for God and your life becomes meaningless without God, then He comes and gives us darshan. After all, think about this. We think our life will become simply come to a standstill if we say only God. The Brahma Samaj people made fun of Ramakrishna that he has become eccentric and crankish, constantly thinking of God. Because he is not normal. He behaves so strangely. Then Ramakrishna heard this and smiled and said, they said, Paramamsa Devar behead hoye gachen. Behead means he has lost his head. He has lost his senses, rationality. জড়ের চিন্তা করে ওরা ভালো আছে, আমি চৈতন্যের চিন্তা করে বেহেড হয়ে গেলাম নাকি? Ramakrishna said, by constantly thinking of the worldly things, insentient objects, jada, money, wealth, then houses, land, property, bank balance, by constantly indulging in all this, they are normal and sane. But thinking about Chaitanya, the Supreme Consciousness, I have become mad. I have lost my head. What kind of logic is this? Chaitanya chinta kore, achaitanya ki hote pare. By constantly thinking of the Chaitanya, the Supreme Consciousness, how can one become unconscious? Yes, of course. He loses interest in the world and worldly affairs and the prizes which the world offers in money, positions, power, awards. All ambition drops away. He wants only God, because if you attain God, everything else is added unto you, as Jesus the Christ said. Sri Ramakrishna gave a very simple example. If you were to add 0 to 0 to 0 to 0, the whole thing adds up to 0. But put 1 before it, all the zeros attain value. The more there is zeros, the more the value of that figure. That one is God. If you remove that one, the entire world becomes a zero. in the Jnana language, Shankaracharya wrote in the Bhashya and Kathopanishad, that Atmana vinirmuktam asat sampadyate. If the Atman, if God, the Ishvara is taken away, the whole world becomes asat, unreal, meaningless. If there is nothing which is unchanging, how can change have any meaning? There has to be some changeless reality behind all change to give meaning to change. This is the rationale behind the existence of God. Why do you think God should exist? By definition, God is unchanging, Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta Swabhava, is omniscient, omnipotent and omnipresent. That infinite reality called God is the unchanging reality behind all this changing scenario. All that changes has to have the background of the changeless. On a white screen, so many scenes are being displayed in the cinema house. All these various changing scenes in the cinema are happening because of the background, changeless white. The changeless white is the Atman or Brahman or God or Ishvara, and all the phenomenal happenings in this world are all like pictures on the screen. व्याकुल हुए ताके डाकते होवे तबे देखा देन তোমরা যা করো নিরাকার সাধন সে খুব ভালো ব্রহ্মজ্ঞান হলে ঠিক বোধ করবে ঈশ্বর সত্যি আর সব অনিত্য ব্রহ্ম সত্য জগন মিথ্যা. He is telling the Brahma Samaj people, Brahma Samaj did not believe in a form of God in temples and images and so on. They meditated on God as Nirakara, formless, but with qualities. God is merciful, like the Muslims, for example. God is merciful, God is full of compassion, God is our supreme, but He has no form. Nirakara Saguna. There are several varieties, combinations. Saguna Sakara, He has qualities like compassion, like love, like mercy and so on. And He has form. He can be seen in images and so on. That is Saguna Sakara. Saguna Nirakara, like the Muslims, the Brahma Samaj, they also followed it. They have qualities of mercy, compassion, grace and so on, love, but He has no form. Saguna and Nirakara. You can't have, of course, Nirguna and Sakara, because the moment you have form, it has to have a guna. But you could have the extreme Advaitic God, who is Nirguna Nirakara. It's called Nirguna Brahman. The Brahman who is qualityless, who has no form, Ashabdam Asparisham Arupam Avyayam Tatharasam Nityam Agandhavachayat Anadjanantam Mahatav Param Dhruvam Nichayatan Mrityu Mukhat Pramuchyate. Kathopanishad. He has no form, He has no name, and He is beyond mind and speech and thought and so on. Yato vacho nivartante apraapya manasasaha anandam brahmano vidwan. He is beyond speech, beyond mind, beyond sensation. He is the supreme Brahman. Nirguna Nirakara. So there are several varieties, but that was a fashion in those days in Calcutta, not to think of God with a form. Many people who like to think of God, they think, I don't go to a temple, I don't get to go to any church and so on. I try to think of God as vast reality, like Akasha, He can't have a form. The answers Ramakrishna gives, how do you know God can't assume a form? He is with form, He is also formless. He is beyond form and formlessness. And how many more things besides He can assume? The simple logic is, Sarva Shaktimatattva of God. God is omnipotent. He has infinite powers to do anything He wants. This is a fundamental hypothesis about God. 3 fundamental qualities of God accepted by all the religions are: 1. Omniscience of God, Sarvagyatva; omnipotence of God, Sarva Shaktimatattva; and omnipresence of God, Sarva Vyapitva. He is Sarvagya, Sarva Shaktiman, and Sarva Vyapi. Omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. So if you accept this definition of God, then how can you say God can't assume a form? If you say God cannot have a form, that means God is not omnipotent. That infinite reality has the capacity to assume a form if He likes, or He can melt away into formlessness if He chooses so. So Ramakrishna gives one a beautiful example. In a sea, because of terrible cold, the water freezes into blocks of ice. That is the form, God with form. And by the love, similarly, by the intense love of the devotee for love of God, God as it were assumes a form for His sake. And then when the sun of Jnana rises, the heat of the sun melts all these blocks of ice into water. That is the formless God. What He calls Nirakara is the same as Sakara. What He calls Nirguna is the same as Saguna. 2 aspects of the same reality, depending upon which attitude of mind you have to look at God. Don't say this is right and that is wrong. This alone is possible and that is not possible. Anything is possible for God, and therefore He can assume any form that He likes according to the choice of the devotee. It's called Ishta Devata idea. In Hinduism, the beauty is you can choose the deity which you like. Suppose I like to worship God in this tree. I like to worship God in a Shivalinga, a stone. I like to worship God in a Shalagrama Shila, in a stone, Vishnu. Why not? I tell God, oh God, I like to think of you as a powerful deity in this tree, in this river. The Hindus worship water, Hindus worship trees, worship flowers, they worship stones. For them it is not stone, it is God Himself present there in that form. The Hindu tells the Lord, oh Lord, I am stupid, I am small, I am ignorant. I want to think of you in this form, in this image, stone image. Then God says, oh, you want me there? All right, I am coming. Then He manifests Himself in that image in order to accept the worship of the devotee. What prevents Him from doing this? He can assume any form, anywhere, as per the wish of a devotee. Because of bhakti, the intense love, the devotee craves for seeing God in this particular form, as Rama or Krishna or Kali or Durga, in whatever form. God assumes that form. The devotee does not think of that Shivalinga as a stone, does not think of Jagannath as a wood. For him it is living God Himself. God chooses to assume that form for the sake of the devotee in order to elevate the devotee's mind, who says, I can think of you in this form alone, please do appear in this form. And He does. That's why the Bhagavad-Gita, the Bhagavan Sri Krishna says, which is quoted by Swami Vivekananda in that famous Parliament of Religions address in Chicago, 11 September 1893. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tas tathaiva bhajamyaham mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvasha. O Partha, all the human beings, they follow my path alone. Whosoever wants to think of me in whatsoever form, I appear in that form, moved by the devotee's devotion. And anybody worshipping me in any form is actually worshipping the infinite reality alone, which is my real nature. God is with form, God is without form. He can both with form and without form, beyond form and formlessness, and how many more things besides. Who can put a limit on the infinitude of God? This is the fundamental teaching of Sri Ramakrishna, which is very simple, logical, and scientific. If it is vast and infinite, you can't put a limit to it. What is the limit of infinite? If you put a limit over infinite, it becomes finite. By definition, infinite is something which is limitless, unbounded, vast, absolute. Anything which is changeless can't be God, because He keeps changing. And therefore, God has to be changeless, and a changeless reality is at the substratum of all changing phenomena. Noumenon and phenomenon Kant spoke about. That is the changeless reality, unchanging reality, which is a substratum of all changes in this world. That changeless reality, therefore, has to be infinite. Why? Because change takes place only in the relative. What is the relative? Space, time, and causation. Change takes place in space. I move from one place to another, I am changing. I can move in time. 10 years ago you saw me, and now you say, oh, you have changed so much. Change takes place in time. Change takes place in space. And causation is only a consequence of sequence of timing. Yesterday was the cause, today is the effect. Today's is the cause and tomorrow's is the effect. So space, time and causation, desha, kala, nimitta as we call them, is responsible for all relative existence. That which is absolute, which is the changeless, is beyond space, beyond time, beyond causation. That which is changeless has to be absolute, because anything which is not absolute will be relative. Anything which is relative will be subject to change. So changelessness per se means it is absolute. That which is absolute has to be infinite. Why? If it are finite, then it has to be subject to change. Space, time and causality, relativity. If it is infinite, it has to be one. Why? Because if the infinite were two infinities will impinge upon each other and both of them will become finite. Swami Vivekananda gives this argument. And therefore, it has to be changeless, has to be absolute. The absolute has to be infinite. The infinite has to be one. If it is one, it should be me. Why? Because if there is anything apart from me, there will be two, and therefore it can't be one. And therefore, I am that absolute infinite. This is Advaita Vedanta, which says, Aham Brahmasmi, Tat Tvamasi, I am Atma Brahma, Prajnanam Brahma. The four Mahavakyas, great sayings from the four Vedas. The highest truth is the simplest. You are that changeless reality. Why is it that I feel I am changing? Because you are encased in a body, conditioned by your mind and thoughts. They are called upadhis. The various limiting adjuncts of the body and the mind and the senses. Identification with them makes you feel that you are small, you are limited, you are finite, you are subject to change, you are subject to so many diseases and sorrow and pain and joy, etc. All these have nothing to do with you. Swami Vivekananda writes in a letter beautifully. Clouds of happiness and misery pass over me. I am that infinite blue sky. I am that infinite ocean of existence. Knowledge, absolute, consciousness, joy, Satchidananda Swarupa, on which so many waves are constantly rising in the form of various worlds, Jagat, Jiva, and so on. The Ashtavakra Samhita says, Swami Vivekananda is extremely fond of it and impressed by it, as taught by Sri Ramakrishna in the secrecy of his room. Mayyanandamaham bodho ascharya jiva vichaya ujjanti ghranti khelanti pravishanti swabhavataha. On me, who is the infinite ocean of Satchidananda, Ananta Mahodadhi, the jivas and the worlds rising and falling as waves. They rise in me, the infinite consciousness, play for some time on me, and again merge in me. I am that infinite ocean of existence. Swami Vivekananda taught this to the West, to everybody, this great truth of the Advaita Vedanta. In one lecture, he was in his oratorical and spiritual best. He spoke from his own direct realization. He startled the audience when he said, never forget the glory of human nature. Buddhas and Christs are but the waves of the infinite ocean which I am. He thumped his chest and said, Buddhas and Christs are but the waves of the infinite ocean which I am. I am that infinite ocean of existence. Not the small I, the ego, but the infinite self which is your real nature. So assert your real nature. Think about it, contemplate it. Never be perturbed by small disturbances in the mind and the body and the senses and the world. The changing world will constantly disturb you. And he is a hero, he is a real jnani and a bhakta who is not disturbed, agitated by the world, and who does not agitate the world, and who is free from undue elation and sorrow, fear, and intense feeling of unhappiness. 12th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita describes a bhakta, Bhagavad Bhakta, in these terms. Yasman no dvijate loko lokan no dvijate chaya harsha marsha bhayo dvegai mukto yas sachame priya. Who is free from harsha, amarsha, bhaya and udvega. Udvega is sorrow, disturbance, agitation, unhappiness. Bhaya, fear. Amarsha, disturbance, dejection, despondency. Harsha, undue elation. Yasman no dvijate logo, lokan no dvijate chaya. He who is not agitated by the world and he who does not agitate this world, who is free from undue elation, from despondency and rejection, from fear and from anxiety, sorrow, he is a devotee who is so dear to me. The same thing with the bhakta as a jnani or a yogi. Same, the qualities are the same. Why am I not agitated? Because I know I am the infinite ocean. Ocean is not agitated because so many rivers fall into this. Swamiji gave another example. Swami Vivekananda said, a mosquito was sitting in the horn of a bull and biting it constantly. And after a long time, the bull felt uneasy, regretful, and he told the mosquito, and the mosquito felt regretful, and told the bull, "Oh bull, Mr. Bull, I'm so sorry. I have been troubling you for a long time. Now I will leave. The bull looked up and saw, oh, I never noticed you. Are you there? You settled down on my horn with all your family all your life. What can you do to me? I am that infinite. Just like a mosquito trying to bite the horn of a bull. All the troubles that we face in this world, all its anxieties and fears and sorrows. Somebody says something against me, somebody is behind me, somebody praises me, somebody blames me, I am elated unnecessarily, I am depressed foolishly. All these come because I think they can disturb me, they can do something to me. Who can disturb me unless I allow myself to be disturbed? How can I not allow myself to be disturbed? By identifying myself with that infinite real self which I am. Think of this, contemplate this, meditate on this. Sri Ramakrishna was taught this sadhana by Totapuri. Two kinds of meditations he taught. The Nirakara sadhana, formless meditation. Totapuri told him, think of the God of Satchidananda as a huge ocean of existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute. Satchidananda Sagara. Then think of yourself as a fish, happily swimming in this ocean of Satchidananda. Just imagine this. Close your eyes and feel yourself as a small, beautiful fish, happily swimming in this ocean of infinite. You're so happy because you are that infinite. One more meditation he gave. Think of Satchidananda as a vast, infinite space, Akasha. Then think of yourself as a small bird flying happily in this sky. So these are meditations that we should practice. Whenever we feel depressed, unhappy, the world hangs too much upon us, then immediately resort to this type of meditation. Identify yourself with the infinite. I am that infinite self. Tell yourself, Satchidananda Shivoham Shivoham. I am that infinite self. And in the path of bhakti, think of as a child of God. I am a child of God. I am His son. I am His daughter. What can anything do to me? My Lord is there to protect me. Artratrana parayanasa bhagavan narayano me gatihi. Whenever you are artha, depressed, unhappy, so many troubles come and disturb you, Narayana, the Supreme Lord alone, is your protector. So many examples are given. Draupadi's example, for example, so pathetic, which can't happen in a civilized society. We think the present day society has simply degenerated. What about Mahabharata society? Everywhere human nature, the brutal human nature, the ugly human nature, the asuric and the demonic nature is always there. Countering that is the divine nature of man. This Daivasura Yuddha is constantly taking place inside us and outside us. Then finally, Sri Krishna came and provided infinite cloths so that she could protect herself. She is crying, He Krishna Achyuta He Kripalaya Hare He Bho Pandavanam Sakhe. Bho Krishna Achyuta Bho Kripalaya Hare Bho Pandavanam Sakhe. Kwasi Kwasi Suyodhana Tapahatam Bho Rakshama Maturam. Ityukto Kshaya Pastra Samsritatanum Yopalayat Draupadim. Artratrana parayanasa bhagavan narayano me gatihi. Where are you? Where are you? Suyodhana, he can't. She is such a pure, holy lady. She cannot even utter the word Duryodhana. Suyodhana, she says, please protect me. I am helpless. Then the Lord came and gave her infinite clothes. See, look at the Lord's wonderful Leela. He did not disturb Dushasana or Duryodhana. He did not remove them. He did not punish them. And he did not remove Draupadi also. He was simply playing. All right, you are going to disrobe her by pulling her sari? Go on. He is pulling and pulling infinite till he became tired and could not proceed further. That is the Lord's Leela. Believe in this. These are not stories. Remember, these Puranic stories are given to you in order that you can really believe in the infinite power of God. These are real. God does come and save you in moments of crisis. These are not mere words. There is one infinite reality behind all existence, who may have a form, who may not. According to whatever form you think, invoke Him, pray to Him, cry to Him, yearn for Him, and He shall protect you. He is Sharanagata Vatsala. He is compassionate, protects those who have come to Him with a feeling of surrender. And when He comes down as Avatara, as Rama, Krishna, Buddha, Jishu, Muhammad, or Sri Ramakrishna, as a prophet, as an avatara, as an incarnation, he can invoke the power of the infinite Lord. In some religions, they don't consider these prophets as avatars, but they can invoke the power of the Supreme Lord and connect you to Him. They are extremely compassionate. And they give Sharanagati, Abhaya, to all those who surrender before Him. Abhayam sarvabhutebhyo dadami ityetad vratam mama, Ramachandra says. Sakrideva prapannaya tavasmiti yachate abhayam sarvabhutebhyo dadamyetad vratam mama. Even once if somebody comes and tells me, I am yours, I give them protection. I give them abhaya, fearlessness. That is my vow as an avatara. Sri Krishna says, the last chapter toward the very end to Arjuna, Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam braja aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami masucha. Aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami. I shall release you from all possible sins. Give up all other pursuits, dharma and adharma, and take refuge in me alone. And I shall release you from all sin. Don't grieve, don't be sorrowful, don't fear. Come unto me, ye that are here weary and heavy laden, I shall give you the rest. Christ said, come unto me, ye that are weary and heavy laden, and I will give thee rest. Whoever is deeply sorrowful, unhappy, and tired of this world, come unto me, I shall save you. So this is the language of bhakti, surrender. Your ego becomes a zero. Or in the path of jnana, you assert your higher self till you realize yourself the infinite. Ego becomes a zero, that is the path of bhakti, and your real self realized as infinite, the path of jnana. And the path of bhakti and the path of jnana are one. A zero and infinity are one and the same thing, which can be scientifically and mathematically proved, as was done by Swami Ramakrishna. ব্রহ্মজ্ঞান হলে ঠিক বোধ করবে ঈশ্বর সত্য আর সব অনিত্য, ব্রহ্ম সত্য জগন মিথ্যা. When you realize God, in reality, Brahmajnana, the knowledge of Brahman when you attain, then you will know that God alone is real and all else is unreal. Anitya means unreality, means changing. There is nothing which is unchanging in the world. Brahma Satya Jagan Mithya. Brahman alone is real, and the world is virtual. So unreal was the word which was commonly used. Now the present online culture, the Qurana, we know it is virtual. I am talking to you, you are listening to me. Is it real? In a sense, no. In another sense, yes. It's a virtual reality. The word mithya is not unreal. Remember this. Unfortunately, in English language, some of the Westerners have translated this as unreal. It is not unreal. This particular coinage was made for a specific purpose, which is the following. That which is absolute Sat, reality, is Brahman. Unchanging, infinite, absolute. That is absolute Sat. What is absolute Asat? Absolutely unreal. It's only a concept without a corresponding object. Examples given in Vedanta are Shasha Sringa, the horns of a hare, Vandhyaputra, the son of a barren woman. A barren woman is a woman who can't conceive and bring out children. Vandhyaputra. And a hare does not have horns. So this statement, Shasha Sringa, Shasha is real, Sringa is real, but Shasha Sringa is meaningless. Vandhya is real and Putra is real, but Vandhyaputra is meaningless. So this absolute Asat is only a concept. Is the world absolute Sat? No, because it is changing. Is absolute Asat? No, because it is seen, realized, touched. Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. Sound and form. Smell, touch. And taste. This is possible in the world. You are able to experience them. You can't simply wish them away. So it is not absolute Sat, neither is absolutely Asat. So in order to describe that which is not absolute Sat, not absolute Asat, the technical term was introduced in Vedanta called Mithya. Mithya is neither absolute Sat, nor is it absolute Asat. It is called Mithya. It is not unreal. It is virtual reality, which is neither real nor unreal, but both real and unreal. It is a peculiar mixture of the contradiction of existence and non-existence, reality and unreality. So you will know that Ishvaro, Ishvari Satya, Jagan Brahma Satya, Jagan Mithya. This world is only a virtual reality, and you can't really cling to the world and attain eternal peace. What is the need of attaining God, attaining Brahman? If you want peace, if you want joy. If you say, I don't want peace or joy, some kind of joy and peace sometimes come to me, at other times I am not peaceful, but let it go on. The world is like that. Please do go ahead. Vedanta and religion is not for you. Go on. But a time will come, remember, nature will come with a terrible blow and wake you up. The wise man wakes up before nature's shock treatment begins. If you don't want to wake up, you keep sleeping, and nature will come down heavily with a cudgel and give you such a slap on both the cheeks. You have to wake up. So say, wake up, O man, uttishtata, jagrata, prapya varan nibodhata. Wake up, arise and awake, and reaching illumined souls, accept their teachings and follow them and be illumined. This is the message that Ramakrishna Kathamrita repeatedly gives you through their Chaitanya Hok. May you be awakened, may you be illumined. May the study of this great book, constant remembrance and contemplation of these teachings awaken in us the divine consciousness is our deep prayer to Sri Ramakrishna. On this occasion, when you are celebrating his birth anniversary, which was on the 4th Varta Tithi, and the 13th is public celebration, which though will not be held on a big scale with the devotees around, will be celebrated with Saptashati Homa, special puja in front of the Mother's temple, to commemorate the centenary of the consecration of Holy Mother Sharada Devi's temple in December 1921. So may He awaken our consciousness, and may He make us blessed by realizing the supreme truth called Brahman or God in this very life. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampadhrita Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.